say you eat a piece of bread, amylase will immediately start to break that down into sugar. So this is literally the same thing as you putting sugar directly into your mouth, right? So when you eat that bread, I want you thinking you're eating a piece of candy.
If health is a state of mental, physical, spiritual, and social well-being, a state in which the body is functioning at 100% and not merely the absence of disease, then why is it that black people are the least healthy race on the planet?
Welcome to Black Health by Evoke, a podcast where we discuss the unfair access to care, health inequality, and the cultural and generational impact of poor health in our communities.
It's time for us to take responsibility for our own health. Meet Dr.E, Dr.t, and myself, Dr.v. We want black people to be encouraged and empowered, for our people are perishing for lack of knowledge. It's time for black health to thrive, not just survive.
Hey, fellas, what's up?
What's going on, man?
How you doing this morning? How you
Man,
doing?
You know what? This is our first podcast.
Yeah, it's exciting,
Our very
man.
first one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Man.
Hopefully, our listeners will give us a break knowing that this is our first podcast. You know, it's only going to get better from here.
Learn something.
And learn something.
Right. Absolutely, man.
Right.
Absolutely.
Hey,
Absolutely.
Dr. Vol, what you eat for breakfast, man?
Man, I have had my water and a piece of fruit. I got my electrolytes, not Gatorade, but grapes. And grapefruit.
What you're saying is you hungry right now.
I'm hungry for change, man. I'm hungry for change.
That's all good,
man.
fellas. Man, we really thought a lot about what we wanted to do, how we wanted to start this podcast off. And we decided to tackle a big topic, right? Because it's having a huge impact on our community. And everything that we're trying to do going forward is talking about our community and how we can help, how it can be helped, right? What are the things that can be done? What are the things we can do? And the interesting thing when we kind of dug into this topic is how simple it is to solve, right? That was the thing that struck me the most when we began to dig into this topic and how simple it is to solve. So we decided to dig into diabetes. Just talk straight about diabetes. And one of the things for y'all to understand is that we are going to be talking simply, right? Yeah, we are doctors. All three of us are doctors. But the point is not for us to sound smart. The point is for us to be able to get our listeners to understand that there are ways, right? That there are alternatives to the things that they've been doing, that they can take control of their health. And so as we dig into diabetes, man, the statistics are crazy, right? Mm-hmm. How many Americans have diabetes right now? 37.3 million Americans have diabetes right now. That's almost 12% of the population, fellas.
Man.
So when we talk about pandemics, this is an epidemic, right?
Yeah.
This is something that's not going away, right? This is something that's not sweeping through and going away after 18 months. This is who we are as Americans. And we just trying to figure out what it is that, that we as doctors can do to change that paradigm. What y'all think?
Man, you know what? Educating yourself is one of the biggest things first. And environment is everything, man. And keeping it simple for you all that don't know the word diabetes, some people call it having that sugar.
Right.
That sugar. I mean, and I'm not talking about the sweet stuff you sprinkle on your cereal, because Dr. Everett, you got me thinking about cereal now. So,
I know, man. That fruit wasn't enough, was it? I had water and fruit.
But education, man, education and habits. What you think, Dr. Tip?
I kind of agree with you, man. I think surrounding the topic of diabetes, man, I think there's been so many myths about diabetes over the years, especially as it relates to black people in general. Just our lack of understanding about diabetes, how we contract it, and all these different things, man, has really caused it to become really, like Dr. Everett was saying, a huge problem, not only in the entire country, but especially in our community, man.
That's a great point. I want to read exactly because I could talk about it and explain it, but I want to read exactly what diabetes is and how it works in the body. In our body, there's a hormone called insulin produced by the pancreas, which controls our blood sugar level by converting extra sugar into glycogen, lipids, and proteins. If due to any reason insulin stops its function, then it causes diabetes, as then sugar is not consumed well by the body. Sugar is not consumed well by the body, so it's in the bloodstream. Diabetes, the sugars.
Right. So basically, in a nutshell and in simpler terms, what that means is
Thank you.
insulin is like the transporter of sugar into cells and into the muscles. And when you get an abundance of sugar just floating around in the blood, there's not enough insulin to get that sugar out of the blood, then it becomes, you start to develop these issues of diabetes. I remember, one of the best ways someone explained it to me to really help people understand, the seriousness, first off, of diabetes and really what that looks like when you start to develop it, having too much sugar in the blood. It's almost like, I think Dr. Ever, we used to talk about this all the time. If you had a water hose and you got pure water flowing through that water hose, right? That's your blood. That's your natural blood flowing through a water hose, flowing through your arteries, your veins, things of that nature. But then you continue to pack just dirt into into one end of that water hose that's flowing with that water, and eventually that water starts to thicken and turn into mud, right? Same thing that happens with the blood. The sugar starts to thicken that blood. You basically got sludge running through your arteries, and it starts to become an issue because it's packed with sugar. And again, man, I think it goes back to lack of education because there's a lot of myths out there when it comes to diabetes in our community. The first thing that we continually think about and we just give into is, well, my mother had it, my father had it, my grandmother had it, my grandfather had it. So I got a history of it in my family, so I'm supposed to get type 2 diabetes, right?
Right.
Man, let's address that. Let's stop right there for a second. Because I think that's one that we really need to dig into a little bit and talk about is this idea that it runs in my family, right? How often have we heard that? It runs in my family. And I think, a really good point is recognizing genetics, right? You can be prone for things. That is the truth. But being prone for things is not the same as getting it. It's not the same as having it. It's not the same thing. Being prone means that now it depends on the genes that you activate by your lifestyle, right? If you are prone for diabetes and you eat a healthy diet, you will not get diabetes. It's that simple. It's not more complicated than that. It's not, I don't have any control over it. And it just is what it is. When people in my family turn 62 and a half, they get diabetes. That's not the way it works. Nah, when you've been spending 62 and a half years eating bad food, you get diabetes. So it is important for us to kind of break that myth wide open.
Yeah. And you say it runs in my family. The reason why it sometimes runs in your family because your family don't run. I mean, it's so many different. It's so many different. So working with patients for so long, we believe because it's sugar in the blood that it's something that we need to do in our diet. But it's lifestyle, like you said earlier, Dr. Everett. There's so many different ways to attack it. Like what Dr. Tipler was talking about, the hose. The reason why the hose is getting sludge in it is because the hose is laying there on the ground. If you take that hose and you shake the hose around, it's going to increase the movement in that hose. So it's not just diet. It's also things you can do with exercise. So coming in and saying, Doc, I'm taking my chromium, right? And I cut back on bread is not going to change those facts. So regular exercise. And I'm not talking about climbing the mountains. I'm not talking about CrossFit. I'm talking about taking a walk and cardio.
And you're not talking about going to the grocery store and sweeping your kitchen. Right. That's not exercise. Just so we clear.
I think that's something too, man, to kind of help people to understand when it comes to exercise. You don't have to be, you don't have to be part of a gym. You don't have to go in and lift the weights and do all those things. But I mean, we sometimes neglect just how beneficial a walk every single day can be, even if it's just 30 minutes. Intentional though, intentional. And I think that's why we say that, sweeping the floor and all those things really don't count, because you're taking breaks. It's not intentional. It's just something that you're doing. But if you make just taking a 30-minute walk every single day intentional, it does a lot. It does so much for the body, so much for people's health. And so there's a lot of things to understand when it comes to diabetes and why, people or we develop diabetes over time, because it's something that you don't just turn a certain age and then all of a sudden, I hit 50. It's time for diabetes to start.
Right.
Well, when you said
Arthur and diabetes,
right? And I think Dr. Tipley, you said something, because the statistics are baffling, right? You're talking about from 2001 to 2020. Diabetes, the prevalence of it is increasing in 18-year-olds now. And the reason why intentionality is so important is because it's two kind of stresses. So walking around, like Dr. Everett said, at the grocery store is great. You're going to get your cardio, but it's two kind of stresses. You got regular stress and you have eustress. Regular stress is something that's destructive to the body and releases toxic hormones on top of the sugar in your blood. But eustress is something that increases endorphins. So you're talking about intentional stress. And when you're like, Doc, what's eustress? Eustress is what you get on Christmas morning when you're hugging mom and dad and you just opened up the brand new present you've been asking for, and it's this euphoric feeling, right? Regular stress is what you get when you get your air conditioning bill and you live in Arizona and it's July. That's the feeling that you have, okay? So it's two kind of stresses that actually help your body heal. So environment actually helps your body to be healthier. So we're not just talking about cutting back sugar. We're talking about looking at our environment. We're talking about regular exercise and movement, shaking that hose. And then we're talking about the nutritional changes that we need to make to incorporate not on a period of time, but a lifestyle. And this is what's going to take, that 11.3% of the United States, which is 37.3 million, 37.3 million that have diabetes. We only got 300,000 in the country. We only got 300,000.
300 million.
300 million in the country. So you're talking about, like, I mean, it's baffling. It's baffling. But it is.
I think the scary thing is, Dr. Everett, you gave us those numbers at the beginning. I wonder what those numbers were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, as compared to now. And, if we were to look at those numbers, you will see across the years, diabetes is one of the fastest growing chronic illnesses that we have in connection with high blood pressure and all those things. And I think that's something else. Don't want to talk about it too much, but someone that has high blood pressure, you're at a higher risk for diabetes as well. And the question that I want to ask all the time is, we talk about it and we give it this nickname. Oh, we got the sugar, or I got the sugars. My uncle has the sugars. You got sugar diabetes. What is it that we feel as Black people that's causing this? Is it just sugar, the sugar in our diet, or what is it that we eat that's actually labeled as sugar, or what is it that we're eating that's causing this problem?
I think that's a good question, because, the one thing we do look at is people will say, well, I don't eat white sugar. I eliminated that from my diet, which is a great thing to do. Don't get me wrong. That's very important to do when you're dealing with prediabetes and diabetes. But sugar can mask itself, right, in all these other forms that a lot of times we don't understand is sugar. If you eating bread, you eating sugar, right? If you eating pasta, you're eating sugar. So things like corn, things like rice, those things, they literally, you know what? From the time you put it in your mouth, there's a chemical in your mouth that's in your saliva called amylase. And amylase immediately, say you eat a piece of bread, amylase will immediately start to break that down into sugar. So this is literally the same thing as you putting sugar directly into your mouth, right? So when you eat that bread, I want you thinking you're eating a piece of candy. Because for your body, that's what it is. That amylase breaks it down into that sugar, and that sugar goes directly into your system, just as if you eating a Snickers.
You mean to tell me eating bread is like eating the Starburst?
The same thing. Same thing. Sorry, y'all. You eating Skittles. That's what you're doing, right? When you eating those things. And so it can be sneaky. It can be sneaky. And so a lot of people will not watch those carbohydrates.
Well, what about those croutons on the salad though? Because if I have a salad, that should really, manage, my diabetes because I'm not getting any sugar.
Yeah, let's talk about that salad. So a lot of times people are like, well, I ate a salad, right? But what do we normally have in a salad? Like Dr. Val was saying, we got croutons on top.
I got some blue cheese.
You got some blue cheese on there, right?
Yeah,
I got some blue cheese, right?
I got some candied
or
cranberries. Some candied cranberries. Some cranberries.
Right. What's the
some cheese?
Not the nuts. What's the nuts? Walnuts, right?
Well, yeah, candy pecans. There we go.
Candy pecans. That's what I was looking for. Candy pecans.
Yes,
right.
Yes,
then you got cheese. I got the shredded cheese on top.
So you telling me that I got lettuce and M&Ms?
That's exactly what you're telling me. That's exactly what we're talking about. Is you got a bed of lettuce with M&M's sprinkled on the top. Or your salad. My camera keep moving here. Or your salad. But that's how your body recognizes it. However it looks to you and however it tastes to you, that's how your body recognizes it. So that's how we get all those, where I'm doing this. Why am I not getting better? Well, it's because you're doing these other things that maybe you didn't know were still just as harmful to your body. So it's about watching those things like those carbohydrates. One of the things I wanted to talk about, you hit on, Dr. Tipler, was like why African Americans suffer from diabetes at the rates that we suffer from diabetes. And one of the things I wanted to dig into was, our history. And because I think that's an important conversation, because y'all know me, I am very much about personal responsibility. Yeah, this is what happened to us, but what we getting ready to do about it, right? That's really kind of how I feel about a lot of things. But I think it's important to recognize and talk about what happened and why we are in the place that we in, and get an understanding of that. So then we can figure out what to do next, right? So we know our history, we know our slave history, right? And we understand that from the beginning of our time here in this country, we were given the worst food. Right. We were given the foods that are hardest to process in your body, the foods that are most difficult to cook, that we may taste delicious. Right. We understand all of those things. And that culture is something that has stuck with us for a very, very long time. But we know our food culture is the same, but our lifestyles are different. And I think when you get those two things clashing, because we used to eat foods with a lot of fat, foods with a lot of sugars, a lot of carbs, but when you're in the fields for 17, 18 hours a day,
I was just about to mention that. You need it back.
You kind of need some fat. You kind of need those things. But if you work in IT,
it's a big difference.
Right.
Big difference.
You need to walk a lot further to get that sub from Subway than Dave did. You need to walk a lot further.
Yeah. So I got a question. I don't. This is my question now, Dr. Everett, to what it is that you said. So now with understanding what you just said about the foods that was eaten back then, but the activity level that was also being used at that time, would we say that today is it primarily the diet, or is it primarily the lack of activity?
Man, that's a good question.
I would say it's both.
That's a good question.
Because
it is both.
It's both.
It is definitely both.
Because you can't put, it don't matter how much fuel you put into an engine, if you don't burn the fuel out of it, it's going to go bad. The car still's not going to work right. You've got to burn the fuel, and then again too, you can't put regular fuel in a car that requires premium. It's going to mess the engine up. So it's both ways. It doesn't work. That's why it has to be hit from
both angles.
Both angles,
right.
or it's not going to work, and that's why we got 12% of the country right now suffering.
Right, and I think when we talk about fitness, you can speak a lot to this, Dr. Tippler. A lot of statistics I've read is when it comes to your overall health, your diet is about 70% of that. Exercise is about 30% of that. Right. So it shows you how important what you put into your mouth is relative to your health. Because here's the thing, what I think is a good answer to that question is you can eat really healthy with minimal exercise and be healthy, but it's difficult to do a lot of exercise and eat really bad. That's much more difficult, right? It's much more difficult to reach optimal health. I'm gonna tell y'all. A couple of years ago, y'all probably remember this. When I was new to Facebook a couple of years ago, I put a post on Facebook that a lot of people didn't like, which meant I loved it, by the way. But what I did was I live in St. Louis City, and St. Louis City is the blackest of St. Louis, right? So our gym in my neighborhood at the time, especially, was all black. And so it was a YMCA. So I went to a YMCA in one part of the city, my part of the city, and I would sometimes go to another YMCA, depending on my schedule, in another part of the city that was not so black. One of the things I noticed, and I go early in the morning, right? Like 5:45, 6 o'clock. One of the things I noticed really, really quickly was when I am at the other YMCA, I got to stand there and wait on equipment. When I am at my YMCA in my neighborhood, I can work on six pieces of equipment at the same time and won't have no problem and no interruption. So what I did was I took a selfie of myself in the gym in my part of the city at 6 a.m. The very next day, I went to the other gym and took a selfie of myself in that gym. And I put both the pictures side by side. Now, in one picture, it's not but one other person in the picture but me, and besides me. In the other picture, it's like 30 people in the picture. And I said, it's 6 a.m. at both of these gyms. Come on, y'all. and so the solutions are not complicated, right? The solution is not complicated. My black gym is empty at 6 a.m. And the gym across town that's not so black is packed at 6 a.m. That's a reflection of these statistics that we see, right, in our health, right? We talk about diabetes, but we're going to be talking about all these other lifestyle conditions. And what we find is our numbers are higher than anybody else's. But a big part of that is the way that we live our lives. It's the way we've decided to address our health or not address our health that I think is the big issue.
And
that's big.
Yeah, I think too what you're saying is it's just movement in exercise, movement in changes nutritionally, movement in lifestyle, and it's not big things. It's tiny, small things.
It's cultural too.
I was just going to say, I think a lot of it is also cultural, and I think a lot of it is, we have to stop listening and getting a lot of these things put in our head that are making us fearful of doing a lot of things. Because I hear this a lot as well from practice members that we've had in our practice that are a little bit older. When we talk to them about possibly getting out, doing some exercise, just doing something as simple as walking, we have these fears that we kind of keep with us and we carry with us, and we allow those fears to become our excuses for not really doing anything to help ourselves. So to ask someone, look, all I need you to do is every day be intentional and walk 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day. You don't have to go to a park. If you have a sidewalk outside of your house, just walk back and forth down the sidewalk, or walk up and down the stairs in your home, or do something to get some activity. But, the pushback is well, I'm 60 years old. I don't want to, I don't want to fall, or I don't want to do this. And, what if this and what if that? And it's like, yeah, but what if you did this? What would that do for your health? So we have all these what ifs and all these fears that keep us from doing these things. But I think the thing that we miss most is, what's the possibility if you were to do it, if you were to make those small changes?
You know what? I want to revisit what you said about just culturally. If we look at our culture too, we're kind of inactive. We kind of look at it. We reward ourselves with barbecues for the family. Our vacations are laying on the beach and greasing ourselves up and getting buffets. And then you look at different cultures, and it might be, I'm going on a camping trip. On this camping trip, we're going to cook outside over a fire. We're going to go fishing. We're going to go hiking. We're going to take our bikes. And that's relaxation. Our relaxation might be sitting on a balcony, nice cigar, some drinks, 5 days in a row. And then we get back and we're like, I need a vacation from my vacation. But if we were out, okay, on vacation, we're taking a family, we're going to go and we're just going to go on a nature trail. I'm going to go and try and hike and climb this mountain. I'm going to do this peak. We're going to do this. Those kind of things aren't relaxing to us. Those kind of things aren't rewarded to us, because we've taken some of the things that make us and put us at our higher state of health, and we look at it as it's work instead of the benefit that we can actually get out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask you guys about a topic, because I think it is important for us to face some of these issues head on that have caused our health issues that sometimes we're afraid to dive into. And one of those topics is our children. And I wanted to talk about that because we are African Americans, our children are getting diabetes at the highest rate. Hispanics are actually not far behind us. But right now, African Americans are the ones our children are getting diabetes at a higher rate. We're seeing kids who are diabetic and pre-diabetic at 12, 15 years old, 19 years old, right? They're diabetics. They're taking their blood sugar at 18, type 2 diabetes, because their bodies are so stressed out. And Dr. Vault mentions things like food deserts, and our culture and the way that we feed our kids. And that's one of the things that I wanted to address, is that, we are stuck in a lot of ways because we live busy lifestyles, right? Some parents,
what's a food desert first? What's a food desert? What's a food desert?
I don't know. I was going to let you handle that.
Okay.
I was gonna let you handle food deserts.
Okay.
I want to get on these parents about how they feeding their kids. Because, and I think it is important, to hold ourselves accountable too. Right, to accept the circumstances that we're, to recognize the circumstances that we're under, but also to take personal responsibility for the decisions that we make. Right. Mm-hmm. And what you feed your kids is your responsibility, no matter what your situation is. Right. And sometimes we will recognize that's more difficult for some people than others. Right. But difficult is still not an excuse, in my opinion, because it is your child's future. It is your child's health. So understanding that you just can't eat fast food 3 or 4 times a week and expect a healthy outcome for your kids.
3 or 4 times a week, 3 or 4 times a day.
Right.
Yeah.
Exclusively, right?
Exclusively. On the way to school, stopping at McDonald's, picking up from school, gonna stop at McDonald's, and then late night, you hungry, let me run to McDonald's.
But
exactly.
Dr. Everett did bring up the food deserts, and one of the things is...
Wait a minute, hold on a second. Is it possible? We're not done with these parents. We ain't done. We're not done with these parents, Dr. Vault.
The food deserts is a part of these parents. We allow it. We allow it. Yeah. We allow it in our communities.
And like you were saying, Tip, it's McDonald's, Hardee's, Wendy's, Burger King, right? All of these things are the things that are most prevalent in our neighborhoods, right? Fast food is what's most prevalent in our neighborhoods. So it becomes this cycle or this catch-22, right, that we in, right? A lot of people eat at fast food. That's why it's more. A lot of black people eat at fast food. That's why it's more fast food in our neighborhoods. Is what businesses can say. We say we eat at fast food because we don't have no healthy food options in our neighborhoods. Right. So now you get into this cycle, right? You get into this cycle where it's not there. Well, y'all eating it. Well, it's not there. So we eating it. You know what I'm saying? And so we get into this back and forth when whose responsibility in the end is it going to be to break the cycle? Is it going to be Burger King's responsibility? Why would they do that? Their business, right? Or is it going to be our responsibility to not patronize Burger King as much? So Burger King did, because Burger King won't stay if a bunch of people ain't buying Whoppers. They not going. They won't do business if a bunch of people not buying Whoppers. So what it becomes is, if we want to break that cycle, then we have to choose these healthier options for ourselves and for our families.
And I think that's where it comes down to the food deserts. So rather than having those healthier options in our neighborhoods, and we have these fast food restaurants, that's what makes it a food desert. So my question now, because we talk about the issues that we have, we talk about reasons why, our health looks the way that it does in regards to diabetes. Now, what is it that we can do when we have these certain issues, these obstacles that we're facing when we want to take better care of our children and we want to feed them better food, but we don't have a grocery store. We have a liquor store, and it may have the healthiest thing you may find in there is sometimes they'll have a bunch of bananas. But that's about it. And, so, it's like, what are we to do? What is it that you can do in order to overcome that as well?
You know what? I looked at that, and it's funny because now I'm jumping back on the parents that Dr. Evans talked about the food deserts. I knew young just came and talked with her the other day. And she's actually a nutritionist, and she's an African-American female, and her son has hypertension. He's not overweight. He does IT. He's tall and very lean, but he has hypertension because when she had him as a child, one of the things that she did was stopping at the McDonald's, stopping at the Burger King. And now he's developed a systemic disorder. And so bringing that back, it's like, well, I couldn't afford to go to Whole Foods. What is these things that are in most communities that a lot of people don't tap into are farmers markets. Farmers markets are a fraction of the price of Whole Foods. You go to Whole Foods or these organic shops sometime, and you walk out $200 later with a half bag full of groceries, right? But farmers market, $200, you can fill a whole paycheck. You can fill a flatbed of a truck up at a farmer's market for $200. So that's an option there. Even gardening. I don't know. Either one of you.
That's a great option.
You all garden, Dr. Yeah. Did you garden? Yep. Dr. Typically garden.
I do not garden. I got a brown thumb, Dr. Vault. My thumb is brown. I know yours ain't brown, but mine is.
Well, we went, Logan, we all brown thumbers, but it's green. You just wipe the brown off. It's a little green under there. You see that? That's just the soil.
I don't know. That ain't what these plants
say. Well, to your question, man, I don't garden. I've been trying to get my garden together. Just haven't put forth I haven't been intentional with getting it together. But I do have an aunt, man. My aunt, she gardens, and she even gardened when I was younger, man. So that's where a lot of that, I grew up in the country, man. So I was used to going in someone's garden. You grab a tomato, grab a cucumber, grab this, that, or the other, and, eating those things. So when we talk about those food deserts, I think that option you just gave, Dr. Vault, is really good and something that I think we as black people need to look at more often, because a lot of times I go to a farmer's market and I don't really see a lot of us there. I mean, there are some there, depending on the place that it is, but that is some place that we should frequent on a regular basis. There's other countries that you go to where, they buy what they need for that day at the market. So they go to the market every single day. And the things that they're buying is fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, fresh cut meat. So, even in that sense, everything is fresh and they only get what they need for that day and they cook it. And, so there's a lot of education that can go into this. We're talking about going to farmers market and how we keep our food and, spending all this. We go to the grocery store once a month and just try to buy all this stuff. But when you do that, we know what that looks like, right? A lot of frozen stuff, a lot of box stuff, a lot of canned stuff. And those are the things that's going to be detrimental to our health.
Exactly, man. And we talk about access to food, right, and food deserts and things like that. And there are Whole Foods in these high end stores, but I don't know if y'all walked in Aldi's lately. But Aldi's getting it done. Aldi's getting it done with the healthier food, man. Because even though the shift is slow, there is a shift to eating healthier, right? So the access, while it's still not great, it's absolutely not great. The access is a lot better. And here's the other point that I would make is that, Dr. Tipley, you said this about your garden, right? You haven't put in the intention or the effort yet in order for your garden to be grown, right? So if we're talking about intention and effort, please tell me where there's a better place to put your intention and effort than in what you feed yourself and what you feed your kids.
Man, it's not. I tell you.
There's no place, right?
I wish I would have done it like yesteryear.
Right. That's where, and so it's about intention and effort. I know it's more difficult to get to those places that have healthy foods. I know it's more difficult to shop, twice a week, 3 times a week at a farmer's market in order to get fresh food. I know that's more difficult, but please explain to me a place where it's more important.
Than
the food that we eat. There is no place that's more important.
I pose a question for both of you, and I want to ask you all this because it's the callers, the listeners on the podcast. I'm pretty sure. So I'm being in Chicago. I just spoke with an 86-year-old yesterday, Italian lady, and her son is a cop, and one of the things she was telling me was she was scared to go down because the guys are always outside on the front of a brownstone, out there smoking and talking and things of that nature. So you're a single mom, you have 3 kids, you work a job, your children have practices, you're picking them up. How do you find ways to be able to be really intentional at being more getting more fresh foods or having more fresh food sources daily than going out and getting something, filling that freezer up for the month and pulling things out? What are some tips, tools, techniques that you can use? We talked about the farmers market. We know that we got fresh food stands. We know that Aldi's now has a really, no, they're not a sponsor. We know that Aldi's has a really nice, right? A really nice organic section in their grocer. But what are some ways that we could achieve those things?
Let me start with this really quick. I think first and foremost, and we said this a few times, but it takes planning ahead, some intentional planning, because also you need to know where it is that you can go and get this food. You need to know budgeting, all these different things. And I can tell you this, man, I was a single father for a long time with my son, and I can tell you, what I just mentioned about, you go to the grocery store and you want to buy these things that you can stick in the freezer, things that's going to be quick for a kid to, come home and just grab and throw in the microwave or whatever the case may be, coming from practice or whatever the case may be. And as I got more into what I'm doing now in chiropractic and into health, I started to realize, this little dude is an athlete. He needs proper nutrition for his body. And what I noticed, man, the money that I was spending on foods where I was putting it in the freezer and it sitting, a lot of the food went bad before he could even get to it. But when I started really focused and putting intention on keeping the refrigerator stocked with just vegetables and fruit, the one thing that I started to see was those things were going quickly. And it ended up being a lot cheaper than buying a lot of the box foods and meals and things like that. But it took that planning and finding the places that I could go to get these specific things that I needed in the house. So I think first and foremost, man, to answer that question, for me, it's going to take some planning. And really that has to be something that they want to do. And you have to plan it out.
I think that's the most important thing, right? Is that intention and planning. And putting some effort into that part of our lives, right? Because we are good at multitasking and making sure the kids get this and get that, and the household has this, and and the car's taken care of, and we good at, and our work is done. We good at doing all of those things. The kids' homework, we good at checking off all those boxes. One of the things we have to add to that list is our kids' nutrition. Our family's nutrition is one of those things that just has to be added to that list. Because it's a skill that we already have. There's many single mothers, right? There's a lot of single fathers. There's a lot of households where both parents work. So many of us are masters already at planning. We just have to put nutrition on that list of those things that we plan for. And I think when we are more intentional, which is the word of the day, I wish I had like a bell or something, right? Intentional is the word of the day today. But when you are more intentional about nutrition, like we are about these other things, then it becomes a priority. Then I think your family's health changes and the health future changes.
And one thing too, kids are products of their environment, so they got to see us eating the fruits and vegetables. They have to see us. We can't be eating a Baconator, a triple cheese Baconator, and then giving them an apple in his hand, right? I saw a commercial.
Dr.e eats some
Baconators.
I saw the commercial 2 days ago. The Baconator is back. It's this burger. It's got like 3 patties on it, and between each patty is all this bacon, and it's called.
You know what that sound like? That sounds like something you. That's exactly what it sounds like. It sounds like, man, either I don't want to live no more. So either I'm going to jump off a bridge or I'm going to eat a Baconator. That's what it sounds like. Which way do I want to go out?
Hey, you know what? It's Atkins.
With cheese and bacon on my face?
It's Atkins friendly. It's Atkins friendly. It's Atkins friendly.
Right. Exactly, man. I was doing a little research on diabetes, and I came across this term, man, and I feel like if we really want to describe to folks what most commonly causes type 2 diabetes, this is what they are renaming, right? Type 2 diabetes, chronic carbohydrate overdose syndrome, which I feel like is the perfect term for anybody who wants to understand how you get diabetes and why they currently have diabetes or why they pre-diabetic, right? Chronic carbohydrate overdose syndrome. You eating too many carbohydrates. That simple, right? It's that simple. Yeah, I think I want to throw that in there because I feel like that's an amazing way to title it. Instead of calling it diabetes, I feel like that's what we should call it from here on out.
Yeah.
Chronic carbohydrate overdose syndrome.
So we've given all these things, man, that causes diabetes, and you know how we are, fellas. We want to give people some tips, some things that they can take from this call. Not that we're just really down on us about diabetes, which we have to be in order for us to get it sometimes. But what is it that we can start doing right now? Because the one thing I want to mention and throw in there is that type 2 diabetes is reversible.
Simple.
It is reversible. And
that's not an arguable point.
Not arguable at all. So with knowing that, fellas, what are some tips that we can give our listeners? Things that they can start to do today if they're diabetic, if they know someone that's diabetic, somebody that they love, a child, whatever the case may be. Let's give them some things that if they're intentional and they really want to make some changes in their life that they can start doing today.
We I think for all of us in our practice, when we're taking care of our practice members, we like to keep it simple.
Yeah.
Right? Because typically keeping it simple is the most likely way that you're going to be able to follow through and get the things done in order to get yourself healthy. So what we did was we put together just a simple 5-point plan for you to reverse, not decrease, not improve, reverse your diabetes. And it's super simple. It's very, very simple. Ain't it, Dr. Vault?
It sure is.
And that's that.
That's that. We're not giving y'all the plan. We just going. We got one though. We got one though. No, so we put together these 5 points, and so if you're ready, get a pencil and a paper, type it in your phone, put it in your iPad, whatever it is you got, because it's 5 points that's super simple. If you want to reverse your diabetes, it's really not more complicated than this. Point number 1: remove refined sugar. What is refined sugar? It's the sugar that we find in processed foods. It's candies, it's cakes, it's in nearly everything that we eat. So if you see high fructose corn syrup, right?
Everything.
White sugar, right? Because not very many people. Some people still, when we cook desserts and all of that stuff, we use white sugar. But white sugar is not something we use all the time because it's hidden in other ways, right? Things like high fructose corn syrup, fruit sugar, all of these new names that they're giving it in order to hide it from us. But it's in everything. So if you can reduce the refined sugar, that's point number 1. Reduce refined sugar.
How do we reduce refined sugar? Stay out of the middle aisles of the grocery store.
Yes.
Simple. Hit that outer ring. Hit that outer ring of the grocery store. Boom.
Get out.
Problem solved. Problem solved. Right? Don't do nothing else. Don't slide down the cereal aisle. Go on the outside. Don't slide down the chip aisle.
And if
Right.
it has,
Everything
if it
that
has
you
a
need.
label on it, if it has a label on it, read it. It'll tell you
Simple.
what is in there. You can look at the label. You can reduce your refined sugars just by reading the labels.
Point number 2. Remove grains. That's things like wheat, corn, rice. Right? The flour. Remove the flour, remove the corn, remove the rice. And I know that's hard to do. I know this may sound difficult, but we're talking about reversing a condition that's going to shorten your life by 20 or 30 years. We're talking about a condition that's going to have you sick for the last 15 years of your life. We're talking about a condition that has people's toes removed, right? A condition that leads to so many other things will affect your health outcome and how you live the rest of your life. So number 2, removing grains, wheat, corn, and rice. Number 3, remove vegetable oils, right? Those high in those omega-6s. What are some of those vegetable oils, y'all?
Vegetable oil.
No. Vegetable oil, right? Vegetable oil. Right, they put it right on the label.
And you know what?
So not that.
Something too that actually with the vegetable oils, if you read the label on it and it says hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated, stay away from it. It is destructive. It is deadly.
That's a good one. Canola oil.
And it will break your body down.
Also, I can't believe it's not butter.
Right.
Or
margarine.
Country Crock and all margarine. All that stuff. Get rid of it.
Butter.
Get rid of
it. Remember that commercial? Where the thing would be like butter.
Right.
They were like, why does it don't taste so good? Butter. Don't eat that. Don't eat
it.
That was number 3, remove vegetable oils. Number 4, and probably the most important one on the list, drink water. Right? Drink water. And the amount of water you drink can vary depending on your weight, your height, your lifestyle, all of those things. But just in general, somewhere between 60 to 100 ounces of water per day. Dr. Tipper, what you about to say?
So you need to address this as well, Doc. So we hear this all the time. Increase your water intake. Well, I'm gonna be running to the bathroom all night if I drink more water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the reason you run to the bathroom all night is because you don't drink water.
Your
bladder is a muscle.
Hold on to
Yeah,
it.
I used to tell people like this, man. I really got a chance to experience that when I was in Iraq, right? You know, when in that heat, I started, we started drinking so much water. I could drink, about 3 or 4 of those large water bottles before I even had to urinate. And the thing is, the bladder, like you said, is a muscle. The more you stretch it, it gets used to being stretched, the more it'll hold. So, like Dr. Everett said, if you are dehydrated and you haven't been drinking enough water, the minute you put a little water in that bladder, it's gonna wanna release it because those stretch receptors have not gotten used to being stretched so far. So the more you drink, the more your body becomes accommodated to that feeling, that full filling of water, and you'll be able to hold your urine a lot longer. So drink more water.
And I think we take our body for granted, the intelligence of our body for granted as far as with detoxification. Drinking water alone helps with detoxifying the body. We spend, in this country, there's millions and millions of dollars that are spent on detox kits and detoxification when fruit and water, proper fruit and water intake alone will supportively detox your body and help to rid systemic disorders and diseases like diabetes.
Exactly. And cancer. To throw that in there as well, because that's about a buildup of toxins. We'll talk about that. That's something that we're going to dig into quite a bit later. And number five, 30 to 60 minutes of aerobic exercise 5 times a week. 5 times a week, right? And so you may say, dang, an hour exercise 5 times a week. And I'm going to go back to our word of the day, ding, intention. Right? Because what's a better way to spend your time than on your health? I can't come up with one. I can't come up with a better way to spend your time than on your health. So being intentional and putting an hour in a day, depending on what your schedule looks like, because like I said, Black people are really good at planning. It's just about what we plan for, right? If Anthony Hamilton come into town, we're going to shuffle our schedule and figure out how we make that concert, right? So we really good at planning. We're really good at taking care of things. And I think if you are intentional about taking care of your health, then that hour a day don't sound so bad.
Absolutely.
Not at all.
Absolutely.
So that's 5 things.
Sometimes we just have to get up a little early to maybe get that exercise in, because we know you got, those stressful days at work. We know you're working long hours at work, but again, we got to be intentional about it. We got to plan ahead. We got to make our health a priority, or we can't take care of those that we love. Point blank.
There you go. Simple. So at night, go to bed. Only watch one episode of Power, not 2. Just go to bed, and so you can get up early. Go to bed. I love making fun of us, man. It's like one of my favorite things to do, y'all. It's one of my favorite things to do because we funny people, we great people, we amazing people. But we do some things, and so go to bed a little bit earlier so that you can wake up a little bit earlier and get that hour in, like you're talking about. So that's 5 things that we gave. Let me say those real quick. Remove all refined sugar. Remove grains. Remove vegetable oils. Drink 60 to 100 ounces of water a day. And number 5, 30 to 60 minutes of aerobic exercise 5 times a week.
And I encourage
solution.
I encourage all of these tips that you're hearing. Do research on those so you can further take your health to another level, because these are the simplest, the surface to really catapult you to the next level of having a higher state of health, reversing diabetes. But you can also do the research. Google is probably in your hand right now. Google. every answer that you need.
And that's it, man. You know, we go ahead, Doc.
Oh no, I wasn't gonna say anything. Just moving.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just but you know, your diabetes has literally been solved. So don't be confused or act confused about what you need to do about it. This is it. It really is that simple to reverse your diabetes. You know, so we want to thank you guys for listening in to us today. You know, Black Health by Evoke is a podcast that we put together simply because we are passionate about helping our people. So we will continue to tackle these tough issues that are plaguing us from a health standpoint going forward. So I hope you guys will continue to join us. Hope you guys like today, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Thank you for listening to Black Health by Evoke.
He who has health has hope, and he who has hope has everything.
You can find us at www.evokingblackhealth.com or all social media platforms at Evoking Black Health.